All right, we're going to go over the basics here on hoof angles. Now we could spend a month talking about this, and this is a subject there's about 1,000 different theories on, but I'm just going to tell you what works for me the very best. And we've spent a lot of years in trial and error and just doing things differently and experimenting and listening to everybody who wanted to talk about it. And so what we do is we try to balance our horses in their feet, and we try to match the angles a horse has between his feet and his shoulders. And that's kind of an art form. You know, not everybody's got that figured out. You know, some people take off too much heel and they leave too much toe, or they're trying to trim a riding horse like a race horse or a driving horse, where, you know, every horse and every discipline's got a little different strategy. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to create a horse and provide him the opportunity to be sure-footed in the woods and to be cadent and graceful in his movement. I'd say 99% of our horses don't have shoes on. We ride everything barefoot here. But there again, where we live, it's a lot of sand and gravel, and we don't have a lot of sharp stones like, say, you would in the Rocky Mountains. So I understand that each region has got a little different way of doing things for different conditions that they're in. So what we do is we want our horse to wear his hoof, and I hate to use the word naturally, but it's an abused term, but that's basically how it is. It's just kind of like the way you wear your shoes or your boots. If you look at your shoes, your heels are going to be worn in a different angle depending on your body structure. So when you buy a new pair of shoes, they just don't feel right until you've got those heels worn at the angle that where your joints and your tendons and things move comfortably in your cadence. Okay, so that's a good way to compare it, where as your horse moves along, he's the same way. Well, he's got maybe one leg that might be a little shorter than the other one, who knows? Or he might have one hoof that's maybe a little bigger than the other one, or he might, you know, there's no perfect horse. But what we want to do is we want to trim his feet differently barefoot as we would if we put shoes on. Now therein lies the problem. A lot of guys are trimming their horses' hooves to go barefoot, but they're trimming them like they're going to put shoes on him. Okay, if you do that, he's going to have troubles, because it's a whole different thought process and a different strategy. We'll do another video on shoes. Okay, right now we're talking about a barefooted horse. So if we're going to keep our horse barefooted, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to want him to toughen his feet and his sole. Okay, so it's kind of like the soles on your shoes. The thicker that sole is, the more resistant it's going to be to stones and different things as you walk along. So if you got on your shoes you wear a little thin sole, you'll feel everything underneath there. But if they're about that thick, like a pair of tennis shoes, you can run across the parking lot and not feel a thing on the stones. All right, so when he trims his feet, we're not going to take a lot of sole off the bottom of his hoof. We might trim it, we might clean it up a little bit, but we're going to really try to preserve that and maintain that the best we can. We might get our knife, and we'll demonstrate in another video, and maybe clean around that frog a little bit. But our purpose, our goal is for him to walk on his daily walk, and wear the bottoms of those feet at their angle. Every shoe, every foot's going to have just a little bit of different angle. So when we get the rasp and we start working on his feet, we don't want to square him up like a carpenter with a square and a plumb, you know, where everything's perfect square, because his body's not perfect square. So we want to kind of take the angle that he's already got, and we want to work on with that. Okay, so we're going to level the bottom of his feet out, but we're not going to square him. We're going to try to maintain that angle he's got. And if he's a little turned in the front, we're going to leave him turned in. God made him that way. There's no such thing as corrective shoeing. I can't straighten his joints and bones out. He was born that way. He developed that way. So if I take a crooked-legged horse and try to straighten him out, I'm going to get him sore where he can't walk. Okay? So I'm going to look at his natural characteristics, and I'm going to try to preserve that. And if I do that, he'll stay sound. You know, most of your unsound horses they've cut the heels off and they've got those angles wrong, where if that angle's wrong and it doesn't match, I may be pulling on tendons in the back and pushing on tendons in the front. Or I might be doing it sideways, pushing and pulling. So what I want to do is he walks along, I want him to put those feet square on the ground. I want him to hit flat. But if he hits his heel first and then his toe, or his side first and then the other side, tells me that we're out of whack. So a lot of times when we'll trim a horse, we'll take him and we'll walk him down the alleyway and we'll watch how he's putting those feet down. Plop, 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 hitting square. Then I know I did a good job. So let me get my tool here real quick. We use a rasp, and we've got nippers that we trim with, but this is primarily what you use. But I bought these things, and they're really nice. It's a little, they call it a horseman's rider's rasp or something or other. But you take this and you go around the edge of his feet. So if you look at Petey's feet here, okay, notice how nice his feet are and how rounded they are, okay? I mean, that doesn't happen by accident, okay? So what I do, or try to do, is in my whole grooming practice, this is part, just like brushing him, okay? I can pick his feet up, okay? And I can take my little rider's rasp and just go around those edges, okay? Just like that. Just like I'm brushing his back, okay? And what that's going to do is take these edges and not get chips and flares. But look how nice his feet are and how trim and how healthy they look. And he's got good tough sole there, hard, you know. I could take him and ride him 20 miles without shoes. Now, if we go somewhere and there's a lot of stones on the road and a lot of sharp gravels, that's a whole different story. You know, you're going to have shoes on him probably. So I want you to look now at this chart. Right here. The different hoof angles. Like this one has a low heel, long toe, and the different angles. But see how they angle this up, and see how that angle's wrong. Okay, where what we want to do, okay, is what we're going to have to do, Brandon, is get down here. If you look right here, see these streaks in his hoof right there? Well, those are actually extensions of his tendons that run down through there. All right. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to match that angle with this angle, okay, with that angle of his shoulder. Well, if that's 45 degrees and this is 53 degrees and that one's 49 degrees, you got different angles, and so that horse cannot be graceful in his cadence. So I'm going to take and try to match these angles the best I can. And I don't want to cut this heel off. I want to leave that there, and I want him to hit his foot square on the ground like this. So as I move along, okay, and I take him out and I ride in rough terrain, he's sure-footed like a goat. You know, he knows where his feet are and he's not stumbling. But if he's got real long toes, and if he's got shoes on that are too big, or if I go out to canter him and his shoulder angle and his hoof angle are different, well, that's like you having 3 different size tires on your car. It's not going to travel straight either. I mean, I've had horses come in here that had 4 different size shoes on. That, you know, I don't know why they did that. Or I've had them where, you know, there's a little tool over here. You measure between the hairline and here. You measure the length of that hoof when you trim it. Well, I've had horses that literally that the front hoof was 3/8 of an inch longer on one side as the other. And I say, well, he's rough in his trot. Well, I would think so. You know, the poor old boy, he's trying to get along, but you know, you got him set up for failure there. He's moving along like a junkyard. So, you know, this is a very touchy subject, and farriers are very possessive of their thought process about this. But the problem is they complicate it. You know, if you get things where all the feet are equal and even, and all the shoes you put on him, if you do put shoes on, are the same weight. You know, sometimes we'll get horses in here that the shoes literally are 6 or 8 ounces difference in weight. Well, how can that horse track straight, and how can he be cadent in his movement if he doesn't have proper balance in his feet? So what I'm going to do is we're going to talk about shoeing horses, and we're going to talk about all that one day when Alvin's here, and I'll give you a demonstration on how to do all this. But what I wanted to do here is just to share with you the thought process behind proper balance. I mean, it's so important that, you know, that you get things trimmed properly, and just understand that you trim a horse barefoot differently than you do one that you're going to put shoes on. A lot of the people, and particularly around the big cities, a lot of their farriers they do a lot of race horses. Well, you handle a racehorse so much differently than a riding horse. A driving horse and a riding horse, they're different. You handle it differently. So, you know, our goal here is when we have a riding horse and a recreational horse, I want him to be sure-footed. I want him not to stumble in the woods. But I promise you, if you shoe him or trim him like a trotter, he's going to be clumsy out there. He's going to be tripping and falling, and you can't be having that. So, you know, talk to your farrier and just discuss with him what your objectives are before he starts working on their feet. And if you've got your horse conditioned to pick his feet up obediently and softly, that farrier will be all ears, and he'll want to be listening to every word you say, because he says to himself, these folks know what they're doing. Their horse knows how to pick his feet up. And, you know, if I were a farrier and the horse wouldn't pick his feet up, I'm not going to trim him. I'd tell that lady, get him to where he'll pick his feet up, and I'll be back next week. You as an owner are responsible to see that that's done properly. It's not your farrier's job, it's yours. So we did a video here just a little bit ago on how to pick his feet up. And just work on that and get that all worked out, and think about those angles, and think about how you feel in certain shoes. Certain shoes feel better than others, and why they do. Well, he's no different. You've got to make him comfortable. When you get him comfortable, he'll be safe, and then he'll be usable.